My own son, who will be going to OP for the next 4 years. He's our last one left in our house, so very excited to hear about that personally. And then we have a great panel as well. Right now, I'll go ahead and give you a bio of who Dr. McDade is. I think everybody knows who she is, but those of you who don't, we'll give you her bio, and then I'll give a brief bio for the panelists. So after Dr. McDade's presentation, each panelist will have about a minute to provide their reaction to the vision and also ask Dr. McDade a question. After she has taken questions or commented back from each of the panelists, then we will take questions in the Zoom chat, and one by one we'll present them, and hopefully we can try to address as much as possible before ending our session at 8:15 today. So with that, the prestigious Dr. LaTanya McDade, she comes to us from Chicago. She started at Prince William as a superintendent on July 1 of last year. As you all know, or if you don't know, Prince William County School Division is the second largest division in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's one of the larger divisions in the country. It serves over 90,000 students. Dr. McDade has made history as being the first woman and first African American to serve as superintendent of our school division. And during her first several months in the office, she launched this Vision 2025, Launching Thriving Futures, which is the topic of discussion today. This is a very ambitious 4-year strategic plan, which will really serve as a framework for ensuring every student in Prince William County graduates with the knowledge, the skills, and habits of mind to create a thriving future for themselves and our community. Dr. McDade served for 23 years in Chicago Public Schools, which was the third largest district in the entire country. She served as chief education officer at Chicago Public Schools, and in her oversight included all of the academic offices supporting over 340,000 students across 638 schools, making sure that equity and access to high quality educational opportunities were at the forefront, while she was also managing a budget that was the north of $3 billion. Under her leadership, Chicago's public schools increased in academic achievement, expanded academic programming, such as AP, World, and Dual Language courses, implementing the largest IB programs in the nation, increasing graduation rates, increasing college enrollment and persistence, and a record low dropout, suspension, and expulsion rates. The next person who's here with us today is our school board chairman for Prince William County, Dr. Babur Lateef. He has served on the board since April of 2018. Dr. Lateef is a physician and owner of Advanced Ophthalmology in Woodbridge. His better half, Dr. Taranum Lateef, and Babur, they have 4 children who have all gone through Prince William County or going through Prince William County schools. Babur is also a member of the Board of Visitors at the University of Virginia, so he is well versed in the entire education continuum. He also serves as the vice chairman of the University of Virginia Health System Board. And one thing that was not on his bio that I'm aware of, that Dr. Lateef is actually working on another doctorate in education at UVA. I really like everything about Babur. The only thing that I don't like about him that he's a Steelers fan, and me being a Ravens fan, we do butt heads there a little bit. But he's an amazing, well-rounded guy. And then we also have an amazing student, Muhammad Abdullah Usufzai, who's a high school student here in Prince William County, and he's going to college in the fall. So congratulations so much for that. Abdullah is very passionate about education reform, political activism, and helping improve the lives, especially of the most vulnerable and least fortunate across the globe. Abdullah has led various community initiatives through his nonprofit called Impact, which is International Muslim Public Action Team. And he recently served on the Prince William County Human Rights Student Leadership Commission. Abdullah also served on the Prince William County Schools Student Senate and as assistant to the town manager of the town of Haymarket. In college, Abdullah hopes to major in political science and continue his pursuits in policy, government, and philanthropy. We also have Reverend Mandy North, who is a pastor here in Manassas Church of the Brethren. Mandy grew up in Bel Air, Maryland. She moved to Virginia to attend Bridgewater College. And then Mandy became a middle school math teacher. She taught for 6 years, including 4 years in Prince William County, where she served as a math support specialist and a math department chair. Mandy attended Union Presbyterian Seminary, where she received her Master's of Arts in Christian Education in 2013. Mandy also has served as the church in many ways as a Sunday school curriculum writer for Shine, published by Meta Media and Brethren Press. She served as an interim pastor at Knoxville Church of the Brethren and pastor for faith formation. And now she's the lead pastor at Manassas Church of the Brethren as well. So great to see you, Pastor North. We also have Jalen Waite, who is a junior at Battlefield High School, and he is very passionate about mental health and social justice issues. Jalen is a founder and a leader of Prince William County Black Student Union Coalition. The Black Student Union Coalition, BSU Coalition, is a group of officers that across the Prince William County schools that have organized over the past year. This organization is really focused on serving students and is run by students, and their work surrounds unearthing the socioeconomic disparities and cultural insensitivities that run rampant among the racial and ethnic minority, specifically with the Black population of students in Prince William County. As the leader of this organization, Jalen oversees the group activities and that include things like publicity and internal meetings, utilizing a wide variety of resources available to make sure that the membership grows and the awareness grows, and the organization also works closely with the Human Rights Student Leadership Council as well. We also have here with another leader from the county, Mr. Curtis Porter, who is a native of Prince William County, and he has a long history of over 200 years family history that's attached to Prince William County. He has served as a chairman of Prince William County Human Rights Commission for the past 29 years, and he's currently serving his 5th term as president of the Virginia Association of Human Rights, which is a statewide organization and an official county, and is attached officially to the county and the city human rights commissions as well. Mr. Porter served 2 terms as the president of the Prince William NAACP as well. And during his tenure as the president of NAACP, he played a significant role in getting the first African-American judge appointed to the bench in Prince William County, and getting the first park and library named after an African-American family, the Chin Library, and getting the Prince William County Human Rights Commission established with enforcement power in lieu of a Human Relations Commission without enforcement powers recommended by the county executive. And he was also a gubernatorial appointee by Governor Doug Wilder to the Virginia Criminal Justice Services Board and the Virginia Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Advisory Committee. Next, we also have another student, Ben Mergler, who is a freshman at Brentsville High School. And he is part of the congregation near Shalom. Ben serves as the vice president of his class as a Student Council Association at his school. And he really enjoys helping out and bringing kindness into his community. He also enjoys social studies, way to go, social studies and history, as Ben believes that's his favorite subject, and he really tries to excel overall at school. So as you can see, we have an amazing panel of students and community leaders, a brilliant panel that is being led by a great presentation we're about to hear by Dr. McDade. So Dr. McDade, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be joining you this evening. I have with me Elisa Botello, who's my chief of staff, and she's going to be handling the visual presentation. Like a true teacher, you have to cover all modalities. So we're going to have some auditory and some visual here just to go through the vision. So tonight I'll be sharing with you Vision 2025, Launching Thriving Futures, which is our 4-year strategic plan for Prince William County Public Schools, which lays out everything from our 4-year goals, as well as all of our priorities and strategies that we will be employing in order to reach those ambitious goals. So I'll give Elisa an opportunity to bring up the presentation, and hopefully everyone can see it now. Thumbs up. All right, great. All right, so we'll start. Atif already talked a little bit about our vision, but I do want to go over our vision because that's what guides us in everything that we do. And that is to ensure that every student in Prince William County not only graduates on time, but graduates with the knowledge, skills, and habits of mind to create a thriving future and for themselves and their community. And that's critically important because we want students to be able to uplift their community with the knowledge and experiences that they have. We also recognize that to realize that vision, we have some ways of being that we have to enact as an organization. And so you'll see here some of our mission, which number one, understanding that our job is to act as trusted partners with our families, with our students, and with our community, understanding that we should be preparing our students to be competitive in a 21st century global society. And then also recognizing that with Prince William County, the level of diversity that we have, which we believe diversity is our superpower. And so we're excited that our county is the 10th most diverse county in the nation, and that's nothing to sneeze at. I think that's something that we all should be incredibly proud of. And with that comes the responsibility to ensure that every single student and family has a sense of belonging within our school community. And so we are committed to inclusive practices and understanding that equity is a moral imperative. Every single student within our community should have an opportunity and a fair shot to succeed, and that cannot be realized without undergirding our work around equity. A couple of quick facts about Prince William County. I won't go through all of them, but it's important to know that we are the second largest school division within the state of Virginia with over 90,000 students. When we first rolled out the strategic plan, we were a little bit over 89, but our enrollment has grown, which we're really happy about that we're seeing continued increases in our enrollment. So we're just above 90,000 students now. We also are a minority majority school division with 72% of our students, a little bit over 72% of our population are comprised of minority students. You'll also see that we have 25% of our student population are English learners. 47% of our student population come from economically disadvantaged homes. And then about a little over 12% of our students are students that have disabilities. We earned in the year 2021, despite the pandemic, our scholars earned $64 million in scholarships upon graduation. We had a 92.8% graduation rate and an average SAT score of 1097. Right now, we have about 41% of our graduates earning advanced credit, which basically means that students are earning credit towards college when they graduate through whether it's advanced placement or IB or Cambridge. And we want to increase that number, but we're currently at 41% there. Now, what's important about the facts that you just saw is that you saw that we have close to 50% of our families that come from economically disadvantaged homes, yet we are coming in dead last with per pupil funding. Now, when this was first developed and rolled out, we were coming in second to last in funding, but since that time, we have now moved to the bottom, which is something that I know our board president, Dr. Lateef, continues to make sure is reverberated throughout the county. It's important for us to be able to, if we believe in equity, to be able to service all of our students within the school division in a way that ensures their success and we realize the vision. So while we are excited about the health of this year's budget, we have to make sure that we're continuing to advocate for increased revenue and resources for all of our schools and students. Our core values are critically important because anything that we do as an organization has to be undergirded by your core values. When you do not live your core values, that's when you stray away from the mission and you don't reach the goal. So we felt that it was important to substantiate our core values within this strategic plan and making sure that In everything that you see that's laid out here, all of our priorities and the work that we do will tie back to what we value at our core. And there are 6 core values that undergird our work. The first one being equity, which I talked about being a moral imperative, because we know that every single student, regardless of their background, regardless of their country of origin, regardless of their race or their social economic status, when we talk about students being able to create a thriving future for themselves and for their community, all means all. And that's where equity comes in. So equity is our first core value. Inclusivity, celebrating our diversity and making sure that all students and families feel safe and supported and a sense of belonging in our schools and in our communities. Innovation is critically important. We want students to not just be, I always say that students should not just be consumers of knowledge, but producers of knowledge, and be visionary and innovative, because they are the students that are going to be leading our country. And so we want to make sure that they are getting an education that allows them to think critically and be innovative. Integrity, understanding that we have to make sure that everything is built on trust, transparency, and dependability. And then the final 2, I think, is most important and apropos considering where we are today coming out of the pandemic and everything that our students and our families have faced: resiliency and well-being, making sure that we are taking responsibility for ourselves and for others. And that's not just academically, but understanding that the physical well-being, the mental health of our students and our families are important, and that we're ensuring that everyone is supported so that they can thrive. The profile of a graduate really represents understanding what an educational organization looks like when the work is done well. And if we are doing our job well, when students matriculate through our system and graduate from our system, our students should graduate as critical thinkers, being able to take the knowledge, as I stated before, and produce new knowledge and apply it to everyday life situations. They should be digital citizens, which knowing how to use information technology, not just for the purpose of acquiring information, but for the betterment of our world. Again, going back to being innovators and visionaries, and then making sure that our students understand the importance of being a global collaborator, respecting the viewpoints and perspectives of others, and recognizing that diversity is a strength. And then resiliency. We want our students to graduate understanding and knowing how to overcome obstacles and adapt in the face of adversity and challenges. We have within our strategic plan 4 key commitments. The first being learning and achievement for all. We believe this is the most critical commitment because this is the commitment that makes good on our promise to academic excellence for all of our students. But we know that students cannot achieve academically if they are not in positive climates and cultures within their school environment. And so the second key commitment is centered around creating a safe, welcoming, and nurturing environment for teachers to teach and for students to learn. We also have family and community engagement as our third key commitment. And this is building on the collaborative nature of what makes the school system a microsystem within the family. Understanding that we cannot do anything well without the family and with the community working together to foster trusting relationships so that all students can be successful. And then the final commitment is organizational coherence, which really just represents understanding that we have to operate as a school system and not a system of schools. One of the things that I heard coming into Prince William County and reading through the leadership profile that the search firm put together under the direction of the board was, and it was reverberated throughout all of the feedback, where communities felt like in their individual schools, they saw some schools having while other schools did not. Some schools providing certain guidance while other schools did not, and not feeling a space of interconnectedness. And so when I say that we have to be a school system, that means that we're all working towards the same North Star, and we all have a defined baseline of excellence, so that every school, you can go above that baseline of excellence, but you can't go below. We're all speaking the same language, communication is clear and transparent, and there is a vision that is shared throughout the organization, and everyone is working towards that shared vision and those ambitious goals. And that's what organizational coherence really represents. I often have to break that down because it's not traditionally in a school system. You hear about achievement, you hear about climate and culture. Not very often do you hear the language or terminology organizational coherence. It's usually found in business nomenclature, but we are a business. Our business just happens to be education. And therefore, we have to operate effectively, and we have to operate in a way that would allow us to realize the vision for our students. And the only way that can happen is if we are all working together and we have focus and coherence and synergy towards meeting our goals. And that's really what organizational coherence is. Now, I will delve into each of the 4 commitments and share a little bit about some of the objectives that we have, some of the key priorities and strategies, and some of our 4-year goals that we're striving to achieve throughout the life of this strategic plan. So we'll start with learning and achievement for all. There's 3 objectives for learning and achievement for all. The first one really is about ensuring equitable access to excellence in education, ensuring that every student is met with challenge and rigor and has an opportunity to own their learning, have a sense of agency and productive struggle. Understanding that we're preparing our students for their future. So every student understanding that when they graduate, that we are still here for them, because our job does not end when we hand the diploma off on the stage at graduation day. That's an exciting time, but the journey really just begins. We want to make sure that when our students graduate from Prince William County, that they have post-secondary success, whether that's in education or in the workforce. But we see that as being our job. We want to make sure that when students graduate, they experience economic mobility, are able to have rewarding careers and be able to have a fulfilling life. And so learning and achievement for all is not just about what happens from the time they enter in pre-kindergarten or kindergarten until graduation day. It's also whether or not we've actually prepared them to realize that vision of creating a thriving future for themselves and their community. And then the third objective for learning and achievement for all is really understanding that that doesn't happen if we don't prepare adults to be able to help our students meet their full potential, making sure that staff members understand that it is a requirement to challenge students and help them along the way. And that's a mindset that has to be established within the organization. I had the pleasure of meeting one-on-one with 2 of our students that are on the panel. So I was really excited to see them and hearing directly from Abdullah and Jalen about their experience. Because if we don't hear directly from our young people what their experiences are, there's no way we'll be able to support them. And that's critically important to me. So you'll see throughout this strategic plan, it's really about improving the experience, the educational experience for our young people, because, you know, academics is one thing, but it's an overall experience when students come to school that prepares them for success. Some of the ways that we will be setting benchmarks to measure success in learning and achievement for all goes beyond the traditional high school graduation rate. In any school division, a school division is going to always measure success on graduation, as we absolutely should. But that is not the only key lever of success that we should be taking a look at. Because you could miss the mark in so many other spaces and so many different populations if you don't disaggregate the data and look at it in different ways and analyze it based on the different student populations that we have. So while graduation rates at 95% is something that we strive for, we also want to make sure that every single student is graduating with at least one early college or career credential. So it doesn't have to be AP advanced placement credit, doesn't have to be international baccalaureate credit. It could be an industry certification, but we want every student to graduate with a leg up towards their post-secondary plans. Right now, we're at about 41%, and we're hoping to get to about 60% in the next 4 years. We also want 60% of our students to be at college readiness benchmarks, because right now we're below that mark. And that's important. And some people say, you know, well, Dr. McDade, you know, not all students are going to go to college. And that is true. I believe that it's not an either or. It's not an argument about should we be focused on college or should we be focused on career? It's both. the North Star is career, and there's multiple pathways for students to get there. But here's what I believe. I want every single student to actually feel like when we say there are pathways they can choose from, they really can choose from those pathways. I want every student to graduate Prince William County understanding that if they want to go to college, they are prepared to go to college. And I don't want students to not choose college because they don't see themselves as a college going student. There's a difference. So we want students to have access to multiple pathways, but we want them to see themselves as being able to really access and make a choice, and not see themselves as not able to take a particular path because they don't feel prepared, which is why it's still important for us to balance out college and career, and making sure that we're still preparing students for success on either pathway. If a student is college ready, then they have the sheer grit and preparedness to make it through any pathway that they choose, even if it's taking the route of an industry certification or going directly into the workforce. And as I talk about balancing college and career, you'll also see that in addition to making sure that students are college ready, we also want to have at least 500 graduates graduating with a formal business apprenticeship and or internship by 2025, because we are placing both an emphasis on college and career, understanding that students who graduate and go into the industry or into the workforce, we want them to go into the workforce or graduate with an apprenticeship in hand. We also are looking to ensure that at least 3,500 students over the next 4 years have summer employment opportunities, whether they're a rising junior or a senior. Again, looking at making sure that we're building students to be really ready for the workforce. And then here you'll see some disaggregated data. We talk about 95% graduation rate, but we can't talk about getting to a 95% graduation rate if we don't acknowledge that when we disaggregate the data, we have some students that are not graduating because they are dropping out, and those dropout rates are more pronounced for students with disabilities and our English learners. And so we have to acknowledge where our gaps are and double down on those gaps and put in place the supports, the strategies, and the resources to decrease dropout rates for some of our most vulnerable students. Our second key commitment, well, before I get to that, I do want to call out some of the key strategies, and I talked a little bit about those. When I talk about having students graduate with an early college credential, it's going to be necessary. The only way for that to happen is for us to expand access to gifted programs and advanced coursework. We still have underrepresented, large underrepresented populations in AP and IB and Cambridge and dual enrollment. And so we will be looking at how students are identified, making sure that more students are accessing not just accessing the coursework, but being successful in advanced coursework. Even if a student takes the coursework and does not get the actual credit at the end, we know that they still fare out better in college, having been exposed to advanced coursework. So expanding access to gifted AP and IB is a big key strategy, which we've already started the work with that. Partnering with equal opportunity schools. We also are really heavily focused on the integrity of the instructional core. We can have all the programs we want, but if we don't have high quality teaching happening in our classrooms, we will not move the needle on academic achievement. So making sure that we're strengthening the quality of teaching and student engagement, and ensuring that students have access to high quality instructional materials that are not watered down, but are rigorous, challenging, and grade level appropriate. We're putting a heavy emphasis on civic learning because we want students to be civically engaged and civic minded. We are also working to maximize student ownership of their learning. I talked a little bit about this earlier in terms of student agency, because students have to own their learning and be more engaged, and have teachers serving more as a facilitator so that students can grapple with complex ideas and create new learning and be critical thinkers. And then fostering workforce development partnerships, looking to partner with our business community and our community organizations so that students have work-based learning experiences and career experiences prior to graduation and after graduation. The second key commitment is positive climate and culture. Nothing that I just described in Learning and Achievement for All can happen if we don't create the conditions for students to be successful in school. So you'll see three core objectives here for positive climate and culture. The first one being fostering inclusivity and connectedness, making sure that students and families feel connected to their schools, understanding that we must support both their physical, academic, and mental well-being for both staff and students, and then making sure that staff feel empowered to be able to do that for students so that the conditions in the workplace are also conducive for strong teaching, and that diverse talent we can attract to Prince William County Public Schools, because I talked earlier about our school division being 72% minority, and we know that representation matters. There was a whole study that was done through TNTP, which is the New Teacher Project, called the Opportunity Myth. And the research shows that students who are taught by teachers and have leaders in their buildings and in their communities that look like them impacts positively their overall success in school. So we are looking to attract a more diverse teaching staff and leadership staff throughout our school division, and we're putting some key strategies in place to do that. And then we're also doubling down on our efforts to make sure all of our facilities are welcoming, safe, and sustainable. And physical structures of the building are important. When a student comes into a school environment that is attractive, that is clean, that is dry, that is safe, not just the physical safety, but the overall safety of a nurturing space, it's important. That's why we also have a commitment to sustainability. The place where students go to learn says something about whether or not we value them. When a student walks into a building that is vibrant, it says someone here cares about me, which is why we are investing in our physical plants as well, to make sure that students feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally when they come into our facilities. Some of the goals for positive climate and culture you'll see here is focused on increasing the diversity of the instructional personnel, and 5% increase. When you see that, you're like, go higher, go higher. Yes, we would love to go higher, but we also want to make sure that we are ambitious yet able to realistic in meeting that goal. And we have a long way to go in increasing diversity. And with the shortage on talent that we have right now, 5% is ambitious and would make a huge impact on the school division if we were able to increase the diversity of our instructional personnel by 5%. This is one of the big highlights for positive climate and culture. You'll see on the far right-hand side of this visual, we are looking to hire 350 new international teachers in order to increase diversity by 2025. We've also seen that more of our assistants, our paraprofessional staff, are people of color. And so if we can support them to pursue careers and get certification in the field, we would be able to grow our own and have more teachers that are diverse within the pool. So we will be supporting 75 teaching assistants with becoming certified special education teachers and helping to fund their educational programming to be able to achieve certification. And so those are two of the things that we're looking at doing with increasing diversity. You'll also see a heavy emphasis on sustainability. We will have by 2025 our first net zero school. We will have a K-12, we want to have a K-12 environmental literacy curriculum that's available to 100% of schools throughout the school division. And then we want to make sure that we're retaining our top talent, which is why you'll see later that we've made some heavy investments in competitive salaries, because we want to retain, once we recruit top talent that are a diverse body of educators, we also want them to stay within Prince William County. So we'll be putting in some strategies in order to do that. But here is one of the most important data points that you'll see here. One of the things that I point out to school leaders every single time we look at the staff surveys, what you'll see across the board in Prince William County right now, that parents are highly satisfied with schools, staff are highly satisfied with schools to the tune of 95% or greater. When we get to the student surveys, while the numbers look good, they pale in comparison to what the adults are saying. So while adult surveys are putting us at above 95%, student surveys are coming in reporting satisfaction at about an 83% rate. And so that was something that caught my attention, because if the young people in our schools are saying, hey, wait a minute, there's something here that we want you to take a look at, they're sounding the alarm, and we have to take note and do something about that. So the way we really will be measuring positive climate and culture, in addition to some of these other hard data points that you see here, is making sure that our students are reporting satisfaction within their school climate, that they feel that there's a sense of belonging and wellness within their schools. That is critically important, because if within the student voice, if we're seeing it, then we know that we're getting it right. And some of the strategies that we will implement in the area of positive climate and culture, we've just launched what's called PWCS HEALS. And this is really a comprehensive plan that focuses primarily on social emotional learning, restorative practices, and mental health, not just for students, but also for staff. I have never seen a time in education more than now that we really need to pay close attention to the overall mental health and well-being of our students and our staff, and removing the stigma that is often associated with mental health. And so we are doing that unapologetically with the launch of the initiative PWCS HEALS. We have several programs that are geared towards recruiting highly qualified staff that are diverse. So you'll see some of those here. You Belong Here is a way for us to look at diversity, inclusion, and equity throughout the organization. I launched this year a first ever equity office, not just a position, but with the support of the board. We now have an actual equity office that is focused on diversity, inclusion, and equity. We're also looking to expand our partnerships with colleges and universities to feed our certified applicant pool. And then we also have a strong maintenance and facility plan, going back to recognizing that we can't ignore our infrastructure, and making sure that our physical plants are also conducive to high quality teaching and learning. The third key commitment is family and community engagement. This is critically important to me, because as a daughter of immigrants, I can tell you that my parents never felt connected to my school community. As a matter of fact, oftentimes my parents felt intimidated to come to the school, because they really didn't understand the school system, and sometimes didn't feel that it was a place that was welcoming to them. And so we can't have families feeling like they don't have a voice in the school, or they're not welcome there, sometimes because of language barriers. And so we are really making sure that every single school has an environment that is warm, welcoming, and supportive to our families, because the family is the primary education system. And so we cannot be disconnected from our families. You'll see three objectives primarily for family and community engagement. And this is around building trusted partnerships with families. And when we talk about partnerships in Prince William County, we're not talking about attending the assemblies or the fun fairs. Those things are all nice. We want families to come and attend and celebrate. But partnership means you also have a voice in your child's education. You also have a platform to be able to share concerns, celebrations, and give input and ideas, and be seen as a trusted partner in the academic progress of your child. And so the ways that we want to do that really is looking at how we not only partner with families, but the whole community, our business partnerships, as well as our community agencies. And when I talked earlier about the diversity of Prince William County and over 100 languages spoken in this county, it's important to have two-way communication, where the school is communicating with the family and the families are able to communicate with the schools, and language is not a barrier. So removing any barriers that may exist with communication. Some of the goals that we've established for family and community engagement include having high functioning school advisory councils. This is where our parents can be a part of the governance of their local school. And right now, every school has a school advisory council, but effectiveness, there's mixed results with that. And so we want to establish a criteria for what makes a high functioning school advisory council. And by 2025, we want to have 85% of our schools meeting that criteria, where families and community members are on those school advisory councils and serving as a governing body within the school with the school leadership. We also want to increase participation in our family engagement series events. And again, this is around helping our families understand how to interact with their schools to support academic progress. And so we have informational and educational training sessions for families, and we want to increase that for targeted populations. Every single school, we have a goal by 2025, when I talked about reducing barriers, making sure that schools have a parent liaison that can be the person that supports a family being more engaged in the educational process. And by 2025, we want every single Prince William County school to have at least one formal business partnership or community agency partnership to support their individual school improvement plans. We did some asset mapping, and what we found is that some schools have so many partners, they don't know what to do with them. And then you have some schools that have zero. And we want to change that and bring more equity in how schools access resources within the community through business and community partnerships. And so we'll be more strategic in how we match and fit schools so that by 2025, 100% of schools have at least one formal partnership to advance their goals. Some of the strategies I've already talked about with how we'll be doing match and fit, and that's going to be driven through Spark. For the first year, we have a funding agenda. And so we launched a funding agenda back in December with the launch of our strategic plan through Spark. And so Spark is aggressively working towards meeting that funding agenda. We have a goal of raising $10 million by 2025 to support that funding agenda. So we're excited about that. We'll be expanding our Global Welcome Center to support families that are newly arriving to Prince William County. And then I talked earlier about having a criteria for our school advisory councils to expand the roles and responsibilities. So those are just a few of the family and community engagement strategies that we'll be employing over the next 4 years to meet some of those goals that I just identified. And our fourth and final commitment is organizational coherence. And you'll see 4 main objectives here. This first objective that you see is really about building cycles of continuous improvement. How do we take the data sets that we have, both quantitative and qualitative, disaggregate those data so that we can, yes, celebrate our successes, but acknowledge and identify where we have areas to improve, understand the root causes for why we're not moving the needle in certain spaces, and then having a clear action plan for how we're going to address that, evaluate, and implement. And that's a cyclical process so that we are continuously making course corrections along the way. Every school has a continuous improvement work plan. And for the first time, the school division, every department within central office will have a continuous improvement work plan for how we better support schools in reaching their goals. Making sure that we're increasing communication and that it is driven by honesty and transparency. Understanding that every dollar that is spent in Prince William County will be driven by our priorities. So this strategic plan, where you see our budget, the board's budget, that budget was developed with the priorities of the strategic plan in mind. So every investment that's being made within this school division is based on the goals we want to achieve for our students. And then finally, making sure that, there's shared accountability. I believe in high levels of expectation for excellence, but that also comes with high levels of accountability as well as support. So these goals are the North Star for the entire school division, including every single school. Everyone is working together towards meeting these goals, and operational excellence is really at the core of organizational coherence. Some of the goals for organizational coherence I talked about earlier, making sure that all the school division and all schools have strong strategic plans. That's a sign of an effective organization. An effective organization understands their purpose. They also know what their core business is, and they know what it looks like when it's done well. And in order to do it well, you have to have a strong strategic plan. So everyone having a strategic plan that is aligned to this vision, as well as the goals and targets for the next 4 years. Equitably funding schools for adequacy. When I talk about adequacy, it's not just about every school getting an equal share, because we know that if we are funded by a student-based budgeting, where if you have 300 students, you get a certain amount of dollars per pupil for those 300. If you've got 2,000 students, you get a certain per pupil dollar amount. Now, let's think about economies of scale. If you have a school with 2,000, of course, they're getting more money, and so they have access to, more programming. But it doesn't matter to me whether it's 300 students in a school or 3,000 students in a school. If a student is walking through that door, they should have the same kind of programming and expectations for excellence as the school that has 3,000 students and more money. So making sure that when we look at how we fund our schools, we're keeping in mind, does a school who maybe has a lower enrollment, once they get their per pupil share, are they funded at a level that will still allow them to provide the kind of excellence that we have set as the gold standard? And if they're not, then that means they're not adequately funded. They may be funded according to the methodology, but that methodology may not hit the mark. And that's what equity is all about. Equity is about every single student's needs being met. So if you need 2 scoops instead of 1 to hit the goal, you get your 2 scoops. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about equitably funding for adequacy. And then here you'll also see one of the things I want to point out is this 100% up-to-date digital learning tools. And so again, going back to asset mapping, we did a lot of root cause analysis, getting to understanding what some of the causes are for inequity throughout the school division. And what we found is that with the pandemic, we were able to go 1-to-1. But what we also found is that there are so many schools that have advanced technological tools, while other schools may not have that. And so we will have a digital equity plan so that every school will have up-to-date digital learning tools that goes beyond the 1-to-1 device. But if you have some schools that have interactive boards, all schools should have interactive board. Whatever the most up-to-date innovative practices are for technological structures within a school, one school shouldn't have while the other does not. And so the digital equity plan makes sure that we solve for that, so that 100% of our schools have the kind of technology that would allow students to be competitive in a global society. And some of the strategies I touched on a little bit already was the digital equity investment plan. We are also doing long-term financial plan and forecasting models, and then establishing division-wide standards and operational requirements for site-based management. So we have site-based management. Site-based management can work well, but it only works well when we have a definition of excellence that everyone is being held accountable to. So those are the 4 key commitments. I tried to kind of fast track through that. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing with that. We've kind of ignited within the school division. There's shared ownership for this vision. So many have been involved in this. We involved over 4,000 stakeholders, a diverse body of stakeholders, including our board, our school leaders. And so one thing that I'm most proud of is that this Vision 2025 really is a shared vision, and it's grounded in the kinds of core values that will hold us accountable for excellence in education for every single student in Prince William County. And so I'm really not only proud to be sharing this with you, I'm excited to be sharing this with you as a part of the community, because you will also be a part of the community that will help us to be able to realize the lofty goals within this plan, because we cannot do it without you. I really do believe that together we all achieve more. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue this evening.
Well, Dr. McDade, that was amazing, a great, very forward-looking strategic plan. And thank you so much for engaging a lot of educators. And I know that I have a lot of friends in Prince William administrators and educators. And the one thing they really love is that under your leadership, really the level of engagement and really getting their feedback and the organizational coherence component, that's the future. I mean, that's brilliant. And it was so well put together. So the amazing presentation, and I just can't say that enough. So thank you for your leadership and to your team, your chief of staff, and the rest of your team. At this time, we're going to give our 6 panelists, each person a minute to respond and react to the presentation, and also give you an opportunity if you want to ask a question. And then Dr. McDade, if there is a question, she can take a minute to respond to your question. We will start with our brilliant students first. So Abdullah, you look really, really sharp. I love the suit and tie. The first reaction and question is to you.
Thank you very much. And I agree with you, Mr. Qarni, that the level of involvement and just reaching out to parents, students, administrators, teachers that Dr. McDade has, really put forth is something that I really admire and I'm really thankful for. I think just the dialogue that we've had that's kind of led to such constructive things such as the strategic plan, I think that's really essential to, moving forward to a better future. And I say that, even though I'm graduating this year, I have 2 younger siblings in our county, and lots of friends and family in our county as well, and born and raised here. So I'm really thankful and excited for the future. Some things that really stand out to me, just one kind of little thing, the lower emissions, environmental literacy, just kind of being passionate about the environment as well. That's something that's really interesting to me in the strategic plan. The larger things too as well, increasing teacher diversity, recruiting better talent and keeping that talent, reaching out to students, having those parent liaisons, increasing the quality of school buildings, just to name a few things, the equitable school funding, the educational and technology literacy. I think these are things that really, when we say 21st century global world and 21st century global economy, these really are things that will help us as students better prepare for just the workforce competition that is present here, not just in the Northern Virginia region, but also just across the world. It's a very competitive world. And, we live in a world where even having 2 master's degrees, for example, will only get you so far, just to, especially here in the Northern Virginia region. And I think really preparing students for post-secondary life and, for the workforce is something that really will help us get ahead and really will help us compete against, for example, we saw Fairfax and Alexandria and Loudoun. These are all counties that have higher per pupil spending. These are all counties that have very different dynamics than us here in Prince William, but we're competing against them ultimately. And it's essential that we have an education and a student climate and culture, and teachers and educators and administrators and people like Dr. McDade who are there to support us and see these issues that we have, and really are helping compensate for these things by really targeting the funding and everything to where we need it the most. And I'm really appreciative of that. That's just kind of my brief comment. So thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you. That was great comments and feedback. And I know we've been gradually, not gradually, pretty assertively increasing funding in Prince William, and we'll get there eventually. We'll under Dr. McDade's leadership, and Dr. Lateef, I know, feels passionate about increasing per pupil funding and just funding overall for school divisions. Jalen, love the bow tie, looks sharp. What do you got for Dr. McDade?
Yeah, so thank you so much, just for those who organize this forum as well as those who are speculating. So firstly, I've been grateful to be able to speak with Dr. McDade on a couple occasions, involving several different kind of disciplines, not only like human rights, social justice, mental health, a whole lot of things. The lady is everywhere. But just a couple of things I'll follow after Abdullah that, that that jump out to me. I really appreciate kind of the multifaceted approach of the strategic plan. And that kind of, goes back to my HRSLC days, the multifaceted approach to unity. I love that so much because there are so many things that are touched on, but none of them are overshadowed in any way. Sustainability, safety, parental involvement, inclusivity, academic performance, post-secondary success, etc. All of those things are touched on, but also elaborated on in a way that makes them seem important among a variety of things that we all have to care about. Spark, I love the idea of, being able to have business partnerships to kind of create a community-based education, which, that old adage, it takes a community or, it takes a family to build one child or whatever, to raise a child. It's so important that we have that community-based education in our school system in order to see to it that all of our students not only have, their teachers, their administrators, but they also have that access to county officials, having a variety of people that they can go to kind of see change. And that kind of leads me into kind of the superlative that I have specifically for Dr. McDade, and that accessibility. I only moved here last year. This is my junior year. I moved here right before my sophomore year. And not being known, nobody knows me. It's like, who is this kid? But being able to immerse myself in several programs, the Human Rights Student Leadership Council, Healthy Communities, Healthy Youth, etc., being able to have those programs available to me, as well as having Dr. McDade, as well as her cabinet available to each individual student, having avenues to speak with Dr. McDade, as well as, having forums where she's invited the Black Student Union Coalition, which is also a relatively new organization, that I feel like Dr. McDade has placed a lot of trust into us, not only to operate in a way that we are allowed to kind of float around and talk about, our mission to a lot of different people, a lot of different forums, but also having that access to Dr. McDade herself. Her personality, again, is kind of random, but I will always continue to maintain she's an amazing orator. She's always everywhere. I see her at Battlefield quite often. I'm sure that other schools can say the same. You kind of create a sense of compassion and verity in everything that you do, which is amazing, and that just goes hand in hand with that ambition. And you never get the sense that Dr. McDade is not working to act. I would wager that she's probably the most relatable superintendent that Prince William County has had or will have in the nearest future. And that's so important because we're walking around the hall saying, "Oh yeah, Dr. McDade is so amazing." Like when I'm not even like trying to gas you up right now. Everybody loves you on the school level, which is so important when you have students that want to build a relationship with somebody, who is perceived in a lot of school systems as kind of being somebody that's inaccessible or is kind of high and mighty. So thank you so much for that. I do have a quick question for you. And this is something that you touched on not only in the strategic plan, but also kind of in your presentation, is that PWCS can seem very fragmented in a lot of ways. That's for a lot of reasons. And I love the emphasis on creating interconnectedness in that strategic plan. So over the course of the next year, and I know the strategic plan is for the next several years, but over the course of the next year, kind of what are your immediate plans to kind of integrate a county that is to some degree segregated across kind of a large geographic and cultural area?
That's a really great question. And I think it starts with taking a hard look at the way, one of the things I called out earlier around site-based management. And for those of you who are not familiar with that term, it's really autonomous schools, so to speak. And autonomy is good when it's bounded to something. And so one of the things that we're launching as a part of the strategic plan, and you'll see, I know earlier, Mr. Porter, you said you kind of combed through it, so you probably should have seen this, but we'll be launching, actually, we've already started a working group around site-based management and defining as an organization what excellence is in Prince William County Public Schools and what does that look like from school to school, from the east to the west end of the county, so that we don't have situations where we have the haves and the have-nots because of governance or decision-making that's taking place that doesn't allow throughout the entire county for us to have a floor of excellence. So I think that's one thing that's really important, because when you do have across the board levels of expectation for excellence in programming, then you do get more opportunities for schools to interact with other schools, because that's how you really get to think about it. When Battlefield has robust programming, what happens? You compete with other schools, you interact with other schools and other students. And if you have a school that doesn't have that, then there's less opportunity for that kind of student-to-student engagement to happen throughout the county. So it's really setting an expectation and a standard and holding all schools to that standard so that we increase the kind of access to opportunities throughout the county for higher levels of student engagement and interaction and competition. So those are some of the things, I know that, one thing that Dr. Lateef is always talking about is diversifying our portfolio of activities for students to engage that goes well beyond, athletics and sports, but, from debate to chess club, et cetera. And those are the ways that you get students to be able to interact and engage throughout the county when we have a diverse portfolio of programming where students can, where schools can interact with each other. And in some spaces that doesn't exist. While some schools may have that kind of programming, other schools don't. And so that's where we're trying to close the gap.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. So one of the great things is, hearing from students. We have another great student on the panel. Ben, would you like to provide feedback or ask a question of Dr. McDade?
Yeah, thank you. So like everyone else said, Dr. McDade is amazing because she has spent so much of her time trying to create this plan for everyone and to show the diversity and inclusivity of our school system. And she's not focused on, just this or just that or any certain thing. It's spread out with all of these different topics that are important to her and to all of us, which is, very important for such a massive commitment like this plan. And she has shown that she's committed. And a couple of things that, I really like about this plan is, as a young child, I used to think that my teachers were terrible or horrible, or I hated them because they didn't understand me. And I appreciate that she's taking this time to help the plan have these relationships be improved between teachers and students, so teachers can more understand their students and be able to relate with them on a level where their teaching becomes so much better than it already is, which, is very good. And I also appreciate that she's reaching out to students to help improve their mental health, and to staff and to anyone in the school county who needs it, because I know I have, or my friends, or just my peers around my school, have struggled with mental health, and I'm sure a lot of people have. And the focus on trying to improve this mental health, which will improve, the rates of graduation and secondary options and everything you can do afterward or during high school, can improve by focusing on mental health and being able to not just focus on mental health for one certain group of students, but everyone, and being able to elevate them all to their best is very important.
Dr. McDade, do you have any reaction to Ben's comments?
Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate, first of all, I'm going to pay all of the students later, okay? so you know. But no, I really appreciate all of their comments. And Ben, I really do think that, and I said this a little bit earlier, but you hit on it too. Right now, the overall social, emotional, and mental well-being of our students is so critically important. And I think all three of you is something that you all have highlighted, and I've seen Jalen at a couple of the mental health fairs and walks, and a lot of the high schools throughout the county are heavily focused on that. And so I'm really impressed with you as students for acknowledging and recognizing this need and calling adults to action and to task and on this very important topic. And it's a topic for the students, I'll say, for you, why I'm so proud, Ben, that you kind of highlighted that, is that for many of the adults here with us this evening, they'll tell you, I know for me and my culture growing up, it was taboo to talk about, mental health. No one talked about it, right? It always existed that people needed support, but no one talked about it. And so I'm just proud that in this county now, we are unapologetically addressing it and doing something about it, and saying that, hey, we all need support, we all need help, and no one should be alone in this. So, I appreciate you each for championing the work in your respective schools and continuing to be a voice as a student to hold us accountable to meet the needs in your respective schools.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. I've only been attached to the county for 20 years, and Dr. Porter can attest that the county has changed so much and become so diverse. One of the things I really love about Prince William, you can find all kinds of different cultures and languages and foods. It's amazing, but you also have a very strong interfaith community from all different perspectives, and they play a really critical role in supporting our schools, and really appreciate that. So with that, I want to go to Reverend Mandy North to see what your reactions are, or if you have any questions for Dr. McDade.
Great, thank you so much. I feel like I'm wearing a couple different hats on this panel. I'm here as a parent, I'm here as a pastor, and I'm here as a former teacher. And so I thought I would, if it's okay, spend a little bit of, taking on hats and putting on other hats. As a parent, I honor and recognize the fact that I come from a place of privilege. We have internet access at our home. My husband and I actually were able to work from home. Our kids are older, so we didn't have some childcare issues during virtual learning like a lot of parents might have had. But I just want to say, as a parent, the different ways that we can access communication with Parent View and Canvas and getting those notifications has just been really helpful to us. So we appreciate the ways that the county is already working and increasing communication. And my kids are thriving. They're doing really well. And so we're really thankful for that. And we're thankful for the times that we have had concerns, how quickly our teachers and administration have responded back to us, and just the ways that they care. It's been a while since I've been in the classroom myself, but my passion is in education. So I did reach out to some of my teacher friends just to get some thoughts and feedback about the strategic plan. And time again, they expressed concerns like these students have around mental health concerns, emotional support, social skills, things of that nature. And they've really felt like what they've been hearing from leadership in the county is, we need to attend to the academic gaps. And they fully agree with that. But it's really hard to meet academic needs when kids' mental and emotional needs aren't being met. And so carving out intentional ways to care and having the right professionals in our county that can meet those needs, I think is going to be just really important as we care for our students kind of moving forward. As a faith leader, those kids sitting at those desks, those students sitting at those desks in those classrooms are the same students who are in our pews and who are worshiping in our churches, in our mosques, in our synagogues. And so engaging our community together, because your kids are my kids. Like those kids are in my youth group. Those kids are actively engaged in our faith community. And so I have appreciated what you said about those community agencies and making those partnerships. I think I think our faith community can be a part of those partnerships too. Recognizing, all of the separation that needs to happen there. And I do want to give thanks to our county for creating space for our kids who worship in outside of Christianity, for our Jewish neighbors and our Muslim neighbors to be able to not have to worry about school and be able to have their holidays. I just really appreciate that thoughtfulness and creating that space for them to worship with their families and to be with their families on their holy days. So we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend. Dr. McDade, do you have any reactions to Pastor North?
Thank you so much. One, I want to say how much I appreciate your comments, and that the county is so large. And so one of my goals has been to meet with as many as, or connect with as many as our faith-based leaders as possible. So it will be really helpful to me to be able to find out more about what's happening in our places of worship. And, of course, I've met some of the faith-based leaders, but for those of you who are joining us this evening, please know that I would love to be able to connect with you. I believe that our faith-based leaders really would be a great network for me to reach more families. Because like you said, they're sitting in your pews, and there are some families in Prince William County Public Schools who I believe feel voiceless, and their voice hasn't been activated. And so I would love to have a way to make some connections with our faith-based leaders and be able to work collaboratively with you to reach more of our families with a lot of the plans that we have within the strategic plan. One of the big things that we want to do is increase the way that we engage with our families. And I think that starts with at the top. Because the more that I'm able to build transparency and trust with our families, the greater success we'll experience as a school division. And so I just ask that if I can make some connections, if you can share some contact information with me, I would love to be able to come out and be in community with you and your congregation. So that's something I'm just putting out there. And some leaders have taken me up on that offer and extended invitations, etc. And whenever I can come, I am there. And I also welcome your input on better ways to collaborate. Because sometimes, in a community in a county this size, also, you don't always know the best vehicle or the best way to check in. So I welcome, your input and insight into ways that we can strengthen the partnership on that front, because I'm definitely open to that. And then the other piece that you mentioned about the academic gap is kind of the same thing that I'll compare it to earlier when I talked about, college or career. It's not an or, it's a both and, right? So with the academic gaps and the social emotional support, it's a both and. We have to do both, and we have to do both extremely well. And so that's why we launched PWCS Heals. It's just starting to take root, it's just getting off the ground. So I think over the years, you'll see a build there. And all of our schools now have social emotional specialists to support our social workers and our counselors in the work. But it's a lot of heavy lifting right now, I'll have to say. And we also need greater support from our community leaders, because the school system can't do it alone. We're not a jack of all trades, because a jack of all trades is a master of none, and we need to master education. We've got to master that. One thing I said earlier is that effective organizations know their core business. Well, I know that our core business is education, but too often we've been held to, healthcare, and I don't do healthcare well. I don't know how to be in the healthcare field, right? And so we need help. We need support. It takes all of the systems working together the health system, the legal system, the school system, all systems have to be working together in order for our students to experience success. And I think that school divisions have to get away from feeling like we have to know it all and do it all. We have to be able to sound the alarm and say, hey, this is an area where we're going to need all hands on deck approach. And I will tell you that right now, social, emotional, and mental health, we're sounding the alarm. We have put a tremendous amount of resources towards that, but our staff is just not equipped to do the work at the level of need that we have right now today. So we're doing a lot, but for those of you who have joined us that know other resources within the community that we can tap into, I am putting out a call to action that, everybody step up and put those resources on the table, because I will never shy away from accepting them. And I'll be the first to say that as educators, we don't know how to do mental health. We don't. We're doing training. We're teaching trauma-informed practices. Counselors are stretched thin. We are increasing social workers year over year, but even with that, we still need the support from trained professional organizations to address the challenges that we're having right now with mental health. And I do know that some of our worship centers have supports and resources that we can tap into. So I welcome any support that's out there. Let us know what's available and we will take advantage of it.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. So if you're a history buff like myself, Prince William has a lot of history where there's a lot of new built on top of the old. And if you really want to enjoy a conversation with Mr. Porter, whose family history runs 200 years plus. So Mr. Porter, what reactions do you have or any questions for Dr. McDade?
Thank you, Secretary Qarni. I'll use that terminology. I think once you were a secretary, you always remain one. Man, how far Prince William County has come since the time that I was a student. Just on a personal front, the schools had the integration when I was in 3rd grade. It was the test year. 4th grade, Prince William County Public Schools, for me, finally fully integrated. My aunt, Mary G. Porter, was one of the courageous one of the 4 African-American teachers to integrate schools at first. My mom was the 2nd wave with Celestine Braxton and Unity Braxton Middle School to 2nd wave of teachers to come in. But we've come a long way, and it is quite impressive. I mean, the strategic plan. I do want to thank Dr. Lateef and the school board for the search that you did to come up with such a wonderful superintendent to lead Prince William County Public Schools. You guys did a fabulous job in doing that. I also want to recognize Commissioner Pedros Prater from the Human Rights Commission, who is our liaison to unity in the community. So I guess, my 2 students, Abdullah and Jalen, proud of you guys, the Human Rights Student Leadership Council. And I just wanted to share for everybody on here, in 2020, the Prince William County Human Rights Commission received the VACO Award, which is the Virginia Association of Counties Award for the best program in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it was in partnership with the Prince William County Public Schools. And that was the Student Human Rights Leadership Council. It's the first time in Prince William County government's history that they've ever received the best award, and it was for that project. So I've said enough, but my question is really focused on outreach and diversifying your teacher, your classroom, and even principals at the various schools in the county. And you made a real point how important it is to see people like you. As I shared, when schools integrated, I never saw an African-American teacher or any other teacher of color until I graduated and went to a HBCU. But we did have an assistant principal, Ron Thompson, who was put in at Osborne and later Osborne Park. as an assistant principal. And it was just so great to see Ron in the hall when I was like a junior or senior in high school. So as you try to increase the diversity within schools, are you reaching out to HBCUs and historically Hispanic serving institutions to help recruit teachers and administrators? So that's my
Yes,
question.
yes, thank you so much, Mr. Porter, for the history lesson and for your comments on the strategic plan and the question. So yes, one of the strategies that you saw was increasing our partnerships with our university partners, HBCUs being one, in how we work with colleges of education to get more teachers on board, teachers of color on board. So yes, that is a part of the strategy when we talk about increasing our university partnerships. And you had one other question, I can't remember what it was.
I believe that was it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Thank you, Dr. Maria, for that response. Last and certainly not least, Mr. Chairman, the students, probably put us to shame with all these brilliant questions, so you got to make it good. And that's the product of our amazing school system, working with our great students. But what do you got, Dr. Lateef? Any comments? Any questions?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Secretary Qarni. I mean, I will, there's one question in the chat about, could the superintendent speak to the objective to raise 10 million to support the school system, and who will be doing that kind of work? I can answer that, and then she might be able to add to that. We have a group called Spark, which is a foundation that supports the school division. It's been their job, and they've had a sort of modest budget where they've been raising 2 to 3 million a year. Maybe 1 to 2 million a year to support the school system with business partnerships. And so they're going to try to up their game, and Dr. McDade has challenged them to do so. And she may want to answer more to that. I think what I would say is this, the strategic plan is fabulous. I want to thank you for Mr. Porter for talking about the school board and how we did go out and find Dr. McDade. Our number one job is to find a superintendent. That's our number one job of any school board, is to hire an excellent superintendent, and we've done that. The second job we have is to oversee the school division and make sure it's properly funded. So here's where the not fun part of the discussion comes in. We have a strategic plan here. It's a shiny new thing. It's fabulous, and it is outstanding. And Dr. McDade, within the context of our revenue sharing agreement with the county, has repurposed monies directed at the strategic plan. She has revised work from all units directed at accomplishing the strategic plan within our current resource allocations. She's requested more monies also to fund the strategic plan moving forward. And this year we've received more monies from the County Board of Supervisors. But I want to remind all of you, and many of you are leaders on this call, I'm out there, and the school board and the County Board of Supervisors struggling in some economic times, and we understand that the taxpayer is as well. But the only way we can move up that scale, and frankly, in the 4 years I've served on this board, I haven't been able to move that. We're at the very bottom of funding in Northern Virginia. I have failed at moving us up that scale, and it's partly because in this county, we decide that when assessments go up on property values, we'll cut the property rate. Well, that cuts the funding to schools. This year, for the first time, the Board of County Supervisors became a little bit creative and innovative and added a meals tax, which will add new revenues to funding the schools. But they took a big cut out of the property rate tax. Now, in their 5-year plan, when they talk to us, they talk about not lowering that tax rate. So if we didn't lower that tax rate, schools would be funded much better, closer, not caught up, but closer to Loudoun and Fairfax. And so shiny new programs like you see here in the Launching Thriving Futures cost money. And the work we need to do, and you heard some questions on this call asking us to, improve our social, mental, emotional efforts. And we've hired record numbers of counselors over the last few years and this year, and we've instituted all sorts of things. But we cannot be everything. We cannot do everything. Our core business, as Dr. McDade eloquently points out, is academics. It is schooling. And, unless this county finds ways to increase its resources coming in so that the Board of County Supervisors can provide more mental health facilities, mental health efforts, so we're not carrying that burden of something we don't do particularly super well, because that's not our job. We do the best we can, and we're continuing to improve it, but we cannot be asked to do it all. And so as you all go out there, and I know, you guys are members of Voice and Unity in the community, it's not popular to go out and say we need to raise the property tax rate. But, there are other ways to raise revenues. The meals tax is one of them. Data centers has been extraordinarily useful for Loudoun County. It can be for us as well. So if we're in, as your congregations, as your folks out there do not want to pay more in property taxes, well, then there's got to be some give, folks. We have to find other ways. And so I ask all of you that, we have this great program. We have this great superintendent. I don't want her to leave at the end of 4 years frustrated that we weren't able to deliver, our promise to her that we would fully fund this program. And that's what I'm committed to. And I'm happy to chat with any of you offline on that effort. But that is the work that, the unpopular work that we have to do as a school board. And not to rain on the parade of this fabulous call today. This is great work. And I want to really emphasize one last thing. So when you leave here, within the current resource allocation, Dr. McDade has already repurposed, revised all efforts towards successfully completing this strategic plan, which I believe will accomplish the goals listed in the plan. So I can tell you that even where we are, she's doing extraordinary work, and as well as the board. So I really appreciate the opportunity to just say a few words. Thank you.
Dr. McDade, do you have any reactions to Dr. Lateef's, Chairman Lateef's comments?
Well, I mean, Dr. Lateef, of course, is spot on. We won't be able to accomplish anything if we're not able to put the investments towards the priorities. And so, while we definitely are excited that we had a strong budget this year, I mean, even with that, we're still looking at what's happening in Richmond and worried about, if things are going to change, if something's going to get cut. And, the uncertainty we shouldn't have when it comes to education and funding our future, which is our student. That uncertainty just should not exist in this space. And, worried about year over year, even if you have a strong budget this year, what's going to happen next year? I think we do have to get to a place where education comes first. And, we're not always kind of chasing our tail to try to figure out how we're going to fund the critical work that needs to happen. I also want to kind of make sure that it's not lost on anyone that while we do have this ambitious vision, the recovery that's going to need to take place over the course of the next 2 years should not be taken lightly, and probably even more than 2 years. If you look at all of the research that's coming out now about learning loss, and the reason we're saying unfinished learning, because some of it isn't just about learning loss, it's about learning that didn't happen, objectives and standards that just were not taught. And so the level and rate of acceleration that's going to be needed for our young people to be able to recover from this and still have access to what we talk about, the kinds of careers is going to allow them to have a fulfilling life and economic mobility. There's a lot of work ahead. And I think everyone should be clear on where we are right now, because we're not in a good place, not just socially and emotionally, but academically. So the two go hand in hand, and we're not in a good place in either space. So this is a long game that we're looking at when we talk about acceleration and recovery. And so that's something that, we didn't touch a lot on. We talked about, all of the good things that we plan for in the strategic plan. But if we don't address the unfinished learning that has occurred over the course of the last 2 years and understand that the 2 years of the pandemic is going to be double or even triple that time to recover from that. So that should be top of mind for everyone, which is another reason that everything that Dr. Lateef posited tonight is so important looking forward, because we have to be prepared to invest not only in the vision that I presented tonight, but also invest in the recovery that's going to be needed long after the stimulus dollars are gone. Because, we have to remember that the stimulus dollars that we're receiving has a shelf life. So that when that money is gone, we have to be able to sustain some of the practices that we put in place. And this year's budget that's aligned to the strategic plan does not include the stimulus money, that the federal stimulus money that we received, because we're not getting that money in perpetuity. So those are things that I think are important to highlight and for everyone to keep top of mind as we go into the next few years.
Thank you, Dr. McDade and Dr. Lateef. And one thing, Dr. Lateef, I know you were very self-critical, but I've been with the county for a long time. I remember the teaching days, and it is in a much better shape financially. Our investments in schools, it has creeped up slowly, not as aggressively as we want, but it definitely has a positive trajectory. And as community members, we definitely are supporting Dr. McDade, your vision, and you're absolutely right, Dr. Lateef, that we have to support that, and we'll do everything in our power to continue to support that, regardless of what happens at the federal level with the ESSER dollars running out, or what happens in Richmond. We could collectively as a county do our best and in multiple capacities. There are a lot of questions that came in through the chat, either to me directly or universally to the thing. One recurring thing, Dr. McDade, and this really ties into funding too, right? Because if we want to retain and attract more diverse teachers and address the needs of our growing diversity and so forth. So I'm just going to couple all of the questions together that folks have asked, is because we are such a diverse county, we are a multicultural county, we've had some efforts in the past, we have a growing diversity, we have on multiple aspects, we have refugee families, multiple immigrant families, a lot of interfaith groups and so forth. What, I know you touched on this in your strategic plan, but can you reemphasize and talk a little bit more about how to really empower educators to embrace the growing diversity? And then also, I know you also touched on it just a little bit on just diversifying the educator workforce in general. I know they go hand in hand. And then I guess I'll throw another question in there, is that how do we also create a more culturally inclusive environment, which I know Prince William really leads the way compared to other school divisions in the nation. So I'm just kind of coupling all of that together into one large question, if you can address that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, some of the strategies that we have identified to execute within the strategic plan gets at some of the root causes of why we're seeing inequities within the school division, especially when we disaggregate data by race. But I think the biggest thing that you'll see coming out of the strategic plan and the work that we're doing is the kind of professional adult learning that has to go hand in hand with the work to change mindsets around how we see our young people and what we expect for them. And I think it's important to note that we want to move away from this notion of assimilation and move towards, acculturation, where we are respecting all cultures and embracing all cultures as a part of the fabric of our society and our community. And so that means that we have to do more to empower the voice of our students as well. So what you heard me say earlier about the student voice being key to listening, this sounds simple, but too often it doesn't happen in schools, is just ask them what they need. A lot of times we're so bent out of shape on, the training that we've gotten, certification on this and certification on that, and subject matter knowledge. Ask students about their experience, ask them what their thoughts are and what they want to see happening in their school communities. And that's what it boils down to. And once we actually hear their voice and listen to them, so not just hear them, but actually listen to what they have to say and then be responsive to that in the way that we provide professional learning to our educators, to our leaders, and the way that we elevate the student voice in the school, I think that's the first step. So for what you'll see coming out of Prince William County to address the issue around how we're going to make sure that that inclusivity is there, and that all cultures and races and backgrounds are respected, is one, identifying that there's a mindset shift that has to happen in some spaces and not pretending that everyone is already there, right? Meeting people where they are, but then providing them with the background knowledge, the learning, and the history and culture of a diverse student population that helps them to see the full potential in every single student that goes well beyond the surface. And so we have to incorporate that learning within our professional development, so that professional learning is not just about learning content and instructional materials and teaching strategies, but understanding the student first lens and how we reach our young people that goes beyond the textbook. And so that's where you'll see a lot of the training coming into place that's incorporated within the cycles of professional learning throughout the organization, starting with the leadership and how you create environments that are hospitable places to all students, and understanding what that means to create that environment and what that looks like and how it looks when it's done well, right? So starting with the leadership and then going into how we address training, implicit bias, equity, and making sure that there's a framework where people understand the language and the vocabulary, and we're all speaking the same language, and we're providing a counter narrative to misinformation that exists right now within our society. So I think those are things that we have to tackle. Sometimes they're sensitive issues, but when you have a county that is as diverse as Prince William, we have to be able to say what our gaps are and what our needs are. But more importantly than that, when we think about the diversity of our student body, we have to engage our young people. I would envision that by the end of this 4 years, we have every single school has some kind of student voice committee, whatever that looks like, but there's a body of students who serve at the core of the school to share, knowledge and experiences that help us create environments that are really nurturing, safe, and welcoming spaces. So I would say 1, professional learning, and then 2, I would say student voice, and then 3, I would say real history, teaching real history, understanding cultures that exist within our school and respecting those cultures, and making sure that we're countering misinformation with factual information, where we understand both the tragedy, the triumph, and the resiliency of the diverse body of people that make up this society.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. That was great. Sister Talib, I'm looking at the time here. I think I'm supposed to turn it back to you for closing remarks. So Dr. Hassan, all yours.
Thank you very, very much, Superintendent McDade. I found it very informative. I hope that the vision gets implemented and we get the funding that will help implement your vision for our schools here in Prince William County. Thank you very much, Secretary Atif Qarni, for moderating, and the students, y'all are all excellent. All right, Reverend Mandy, you are excellent, and Brother Lateef, thank you for reminding us our civic duty of going to every Tuesday. There are meetings at the school board, and I don't know whether they've passed the school, not school board, but our county board. Every Tuesday there are meetings, and I'm not sure whether they've finished passing the budget for the upcoming year. But as citizens, tax-paying citizens, we need to let our county board people, whoever represents your particular district, what you think that we need to better fund Prince William County Public Schools so that we can be toe-to-toe with Fairfax County and Loudoun County and Montgomery County. So with that, I thank every one of you who's tuned in today. I know this is a Sunday evening and you could have been watching 60 Minutes and other shows, but thank you very much for tuning in. And let's all give, I don't know whether he'll unmute, but for the video, we want to do a screenshot. So if you, at this point in time, if you'd like to hit your video so that we can do a gallery shot of the view of the people who joined in. And yeah, it looks great. We want to give a round of applause also to Ramil. He's going to post this on Facebook and YouTube. And once he does that, I will connect it to Unity in the Community's website. And then all the other churches can copy it and put it on your website. I think this is something that all of our congregations here in Prince William County, this is very excellent, useful information. The more we understand the importance of our school system, then the better we will have a school system so that we adults advocate with the County Board of Supervisors, as well as with our local schools of what we want for our children to be learning, okay? And with that, I bid you all adieu, farewell. Have a very peaceful evening. Bye-bye.